If we're waiting for the publication process to be perfect, we're going to die waiting.
My name is Bethany Saltman, and I am an author and a best-selling book coach.
And I'm Fran Hauser. I'm an author, a keynote speaker, and a publishing strategist. These How I Did It conversations will inspire listeners to claim their own authority mindset and turn the story they can't stop telling into a book the world needs to read.
This is Bookbound, the podcast, created in partnership with Share Your Genius. Thank you for joining us on this episode of Bookbound, the podcast. I am absolutely thrilled for you to hear from Chloé Cooper Jones. Her memoir, Easy Beauty, was a finalist for the Pulitzer Prize in Memoir and a New York Times Notable Book of 2022. And frankly, it's one of the best books I've read in years. She's such a powerhouse of a writer, and it's an honor to have her on the show. I took so many notes on our conversation, and I'm excited for you all to hear her talk about how important it is to be a custodian of your own work. Chloé's depth, understanding, and groundedness left us super inspired, and we'll be thinking about this conversation for a long time to come. I know you'll enjoy it. Hello, I am so excited to be joined by Chloé Cooper Jones today, the author of Easy Beauty. And I have to say, this is now one of my favorite books of all time. And I'm not even kidding. I had to really build up to say that because it sounds like I'm fangirling too much, but it's actually true. So I'm super duper excited for this conversation.
And I have to tell you, Chloé, Bethany is not easily impressed.
This is true.
So we talk about this all the time.
Yeah, it's true. So we're super duper excited. But so we're just going to dive in with the question that we like to ask everybody in the beginning, which is, how did you know that this was a book? So we know that, we've done some reading and other interviews, and we understand that this book began as an essay that you wrote for The Believer, which began in your journals. Was there anything that you felt in this process that made you think, this feels a little bit different?
First, I have to say I'm just really grateful to get to talk to you both, and extremely honored that I've written a book that resonates so deeply with you. It's very good timing as I'm working on the second book, and you sort of start that process of imposter syndrome over, from the beginning, or this feeling of like, am I ever going to be able to say the thing I really want to say in writing? And so it's very meaningful, and I don't take for granted that sentiment, especially as now I know you're very hard to please. So I'm hoping I don't let you down on the next books. But yes, but I just have to say thank you to that first. So this book did begin as really just like a problem I wanted to solve in my own personal life. And because I write, I process things through writing. It's the way that I just try to understand my world or my feelings or my observations. And so it wasn't unusual for me when I was trying to figure out how to be a better mother, a little bit more present in my family life, and sort of thinking through what it meant to be a disabled person and to really embrace that identity, and rather than try to hide it from people. Like, these were all these sort of sets of problems that were swirling in my life at the time. And I was also working a lot as a journalist, and I was traveling, and I would always have the work that I was doing ostensibly on like the surface of the trip, whether it be, producing an article for a magazine or working on my dissertation. There would always be like a layer of the real work, so to speak, that I was doing. And then I would come home, or at the end of the day, and sort of write in my journal, or I'd be on a train sort of taking notes to myself that would be this like other thing that I didn't think was like my quote unquote real work, but was just sort of this internal work of something I was trying to figure out in my own life. And I had a friend who was an editor at The Believer, asked me if I had any writing. I didn't feel like I did have any writing, but I had this sort of what I perceived to be like jumble of notes from Lake Como, from a trip that I had taken, and sent it to him, and they published it. I really had this feeling, which it's like you write things and they kind of disappear into the void of the internet. And you think, maybe your friends will read them and text you something, or my mom will read it. But this particular piece really went very far, and I ended up getting a lot of letters from readers who had felt that I was speaking about something that was relevant to their own lives. And that to me is the test of whether or not you have a good memoir project or like a good nonfiction project. Does the point of what you're trying to write transcend the details of your own life, or transcend the problem that you're immediately trying to solve in your personal life? And instead, is it aiming at something higher and more universal, or something that's relevant to a reader that doesn't know you and doesn't care about your family or anything like that?
Yeah, yeah.
And when I started to get those messages from readers, I thought, okay, maybe there's something here that is worth exploring further. Yeah.
Interesting, interesting. So it was post publication when you received all that response that you thought maybe there's a book here. It wasn't as you were writing it.
No, absolutely not. It was just it was just an essay that I honestly never would have published had I not been prompted to do so, and supported by my friend who published it. And then, it was only after I was getting a lot of response that I thought, oh, okay, maybe I'm really speaking to something that's larger than myself. And that's the only reason I would have written, a larger project.
I love that.
So, can you tell us a little bit about kind of the essay to book journey? Like, did somebody approach you? Did an agent reach out to you? Did a publisher reach out to you, or were you more proactive about then creating this book?
I was very lucky, and I had suddenly an inbox full of agents, that were very, very interested.
Wow.
It was just sort of overwhelming, the response. It was like one of the most humbling and thrilling experiences of my I mean, I'd been kind of grinding it out as a journalist
Yeah.
and writer of other things for what felt like many, many, many years, and also teaching and studying and working in a lot of different disciplines, and around the humanities and around writing. And this is one of the things, one of the few things that I've written that really seemed to strike a deep chord in people. And so, the journey was very fast and very shocking, which was the piece came out. I genuinely was like, no one will read this, or a few people will like it on Instagram or something like
No,
that. Yeah, I mean, I had probably hundreds and hundreds of people write to me, and that,
wow.
like readers. And then I had probably, I don't know, dozens of agents that sort of popped into my
Oh my
email.
gosh.
And my current, I mean, my agent, Claudia Ballard, she wrote me this letter that was just so personal and meaningful to me that it just sort of I didn't respond right away. It sort of like sat in my heart for weeks, where I would just kind of come back to it and look at it about why she felt so connected to what I'd written. She was the obvious sort of choice, and she changed my whole life. So that was the piece came out in June. I signed with Claudia at WME in August, and I had sold the book at auction in November. So just like, and I wrote the book proposal in that time, from August to November, because again, it was not a book. It was just a piece I felt like I had to get out. So then I had to really conceptualize what it would mean to turn it into a book, and whether or not that book length project could hold the same meaning and
Mhm.
importance that the essay form held for people. Because of course, if the essay form was all, that was the pinnacle, then I needed to start over with something else. So I really had to figure out what it meant to turn this into a book. And I was unbelievably lucky with Claudia, who she's my favorite human after my child. I love her so
Oh,
much. She's
oh
just
my gosh.
she just completely, changed the entire trajectory of my life with her belief
Mm.
and her incredible support and her rigorous, like profoundly rigorous, like feedback. So,
Did you
Wow.
even meet with other agents?
no.
Oh my gosh. Chloe, you're a woman who works from the heart. I love it.
Yeah, it's like your soulmate when you meet them. I've been totally right about that. And it's the same thing with my editor, Lauren Ween. I feel like this book is as much theirs as it is mine. I always speak about it in a we. It's like we did this, we finished this, we accomplished this, because these two women shaped it so profoundly. And I think that I have a really good instinct for when, and this is probably, in part developed from being a disabled person, and feeling that I'm often in situations in which people aren't really seeing me as an individual and are often, I mean, this is not specific to me or to disability. Every one of us has been in situations where we're like, wow, I can really feel in this interaction that some other external thing is dictating how they're talking to me, whether
Totally.
it's my body, my age, my gender, whatever it is. The thing I think of as my true self is being really seen or respond, like someone's genuinely responding to a thing that feels essentially myself. And I had that instantly with Claudia, instantly with Lauren. And
Mm,
when I find those connections, that feeling of deep kinship, I do not take it for granted. I run at it full steam, and it
yeah.
has always served me unbelievably well.
I love that. Well, and one of the things that we're learning a lot about in these conversations with authors about process is the role of agents and editors. So I love that you are telling us that story because, yes, we're talking to aspiring writers and seasoned writers, but we're also talking to the industry. And I think that the more we can all be working from the heart, the better off we'll all be. So that's such a
Mhm.
great story.
Well, the thing, just to say, a little about that is, I think the thing that I've learned is like having the wrong agent or having the wrong editor is worse than not having an agent, not having an
Oh,
editor.
yes,
Uh,
yes, yes,
the thing
absolutely.
I didn't realize this until I went through the book process, but there's just so many micro decisions that are made on a
Mm,
day-to-day basis, especially when you're like leading up to publication or you're going through your edits or you're starting to field sort of, yeah, like the post publication whatever. There's so many tiny decisions that I lean on with, I lean on Claudia, I lean on Lauren to help me process and solve. And it's only been through that process that I've recognized that if I had the wrong agent and the wrong editor, there are all these opportunities for them to sort of like slowly shift me almost imperceptibly, like decision by decision to the wrong place. It's very
yes,
rare that it's
yep,
actually like one big thing that changes somebody's career positively or negatively. It's usually
mm,
a series of sort of micro
mm,
decisions. And to have a team in these women that are like so forward thinking, so devoted, so hardworking, so brilliant, and who genuinely want the best for me and want they don't let me off the hook. They're not like they're not pushovers. These women
yeah,
they're two
yeah,
like the toughest, smartest people I've ever met, but they press very hard on me to achieve the vision that I'm after, and they let me know when I haven't hit that mark, and they help me make decisions to always be chasing that rather than I think sometimes agents and editors or the industry in general will be pushing you to hit their vision of what you can
mm,
or should be or what your book could be to like slot it into a particular genre that maybe doesn't actually fit you or to package it in a way that doesn't actually speak to who you are. And if
yeah.
that's the aim, then it's like those micro decisions will just lead you in the wrong direction. But if the aim is to help you accomplish the best version of your vision, then every of those decisions, they help you stay on the track that you really want to be on.
So interesting. Yeah, it it really presses you to connect with your goal.
Mhm.
As I was reading about your process, I learned that people wanted you to go chronological, start at the beginning, and you said no. And I was
Mhm.
thinking about my own experience of writing a memoir, and I was told I had to start from the beginning and go chronological, and I didn't say no. I'm
Mhm.
happy with the book,
Mhm.
but, I at that point, I had been grinding it out, as you say, for so long, and here Random House was saying, "We love your book, we wanna publish it, and this is what we want you to do," and I was like, "Well, who am I to say no to that? They must know something I don't know," and my goal at that point was to get the book out. I'd been working on it for so long.
Yeah.
So, it's really interesting, and when we work with writers, we talk about that, like, what is your goal? And, sometimes it's okay to compromise and sometimes it's not.
I think the most important thing is finishing things, and there's
Yes.
always a way that you learn who you are as a writer and what you want and how where that line is between what you compromise and what you don't compromise on. Like I think the only way to learn that is through finishing things and
I
and
love
putting
that.
them out and going through
So good.
there's just no substitute. And I think that the mistake that I would be worried about in my own career more than putting out something that maybe it's like, well, I don't know, the thing I'd be worried about more is being so precious about something, being so uncompromising or being so protective that it actually never gets done,
Yeah.
which is so easy to do because even after there's just, I'll speak for myself. Maybe other writers don't have this experience, but I've never written a single thing, Easy Beauty included, where it's done and I look at it and I go, wow, I really nailed it. I really did everything that it's like,
Right.
no,
Yeah.
I'm always looking at the things that I've done. Well, for one, I try to never look back at the things that I've done, but
Smart.
then, well, with
Yeah.
Easy Beauty, I've had to talk about it for a year and a half, and I've done readings, and I'm editing the published page as I'm reading it out loud.
Right. Of
I'm
course.
looking at things in the text where I'm going, "Oh my god," that's wrong. This needs to be in this order. And that's okay because that the book's out. I did the best I could in that moment with the
Yep.
information that I had. And now I have to roll these lessons into the next thing and the next thing and
Yes.
the next
Yes.
thing.
Yes.
So I think if we're waiting for the publication process to be perfect, we're going to die waiting. It's
Yeah.
like, and I
Yeah.
just,
Pick your battles.
yeah, I mean, I just really want to give all my energy to the work. Like, I just want to keep doing
Mm,
the work.
Yes.
mhm,
Yes. Yes.
mhm.
So,
So good. Hey there, sorry to interrupt, but we know you're hungry for more on how to write, publish, and launch your own book. So we'd love to tell you about something special we have starting up in May of 2024.
Yes, Bethany and I are so incredibly excited to host a Bookbound accelerator, literally designed just for our listeners. We know so many of you want to write a nonfiction book, but you aren't sure how. So we created the super practical accelerator to take you step by step through the process. And the coolest part is that we've designed this whether you're interested in going the traditional route, hybrid, or self-publishing.
Yep, we've gotcha. So if you're a woman writer, professional, entrepreneur, or thought leader who's ready to turn the story you can't stop telling into a book the world needs to read, this is the opportunity for you. Over the course of 2 months, we'll help you create a bookbound blueprint, which will include your book's big idea, organizing principle, table of contents, market positioning, and title.
In just 8 weeks, you'll come up with your bookbound blueprint. Plus, you'll get exclusive access to our very own extensive database of publishers who are looking for books just like yours. Yep, the only people who have access to this database are folks in the accelerator.
Go to bookboundpodcast.com/accelerator for all the details. The link will be in the show notes too. We hope you'll join us. Limited spots are available. If you're interested, apply today.
I would love to go back just for a second to the book proposal
Yes.
Mhm.
and you're with Claudia, you're working on this book proposal. One of the things that we always hear from aspiring authors who are looking for an agent is that the biggest barrier to finding an agent is that they don't have a platform to market the book. Did platform ever come up when you were talking to Claudia? Was that even a part of the conversation, your
No,
platform?
not at all. Never. Uh, if anything, I think almost the opposite. I think there are certain writers with massive platforms that have actually alienated readers by being too online or being, and I think that one thing, I think there was like a brief moment in the book industry where platforms seem to matter a lot. And then almost, it feels to me like almost instantly, what publishers actually figured out is that platform does not translate to sales at all.
Right.
Like,
Yep.
the reason why people want to follow you on Twitter is not necessarily,
Mhm.
whatever Twitter used to be, is not the reason why they want to buy your book. And same thing with Instagram. These things can be helpful. I try to maintain my Instagram just to sort of like let people know what I'm doing, but I'm pretty bad at it. And I think if you're not authentically, like genuinely really loving to communicate with your audience in that way, like it just comes off as false and like people
Totally.
don't
Yeah.
like that, so
Yep.
I
I think
think
that's so
that
true.
the thing I heard way more was please be thoughtful about actually what you're putting on Twitter, Instagram. Like, please don't, you know, get us into a situation where we're apologizing, which was not an issue with me because I can't use these things. I don't use them well enough to get in trouble. I hope. Gosh, now that I've said that, I'm going to post something terrible. um, but no, I don't really think that's an issue. My complete sense in every single aspect of the process, every editor that I talked to, every publicity person, every agent was like, we just want the best writing. Now, there is a sense in which, I mean, this is sort of related to platform, but is not the same thing. There is a sense in which I think it's important to know how to do the legwork to be the best, like, custodian of your work,
Yes.
meaning reaching out to people, being really thoughtful about booksellers, building genuine relationships with other writers, supporting other people's work, doing book events, doing podcasts, like trying to be really available to
Yeah.
put your work in the best light and doing the sort of publicity needs around that work. I always think of my team at Avid Reader as my coworkers. We are all colleagues in a
Oh, I
shared
love that.
goal.
Yeah.
And it's very important for me to understand, like, what is everybody's job on this team, including mine? And how can I put my energies, my efforts toward, um, being the best teammate in this shared goal, which is the success of the book. And that's a lot of legwork. That's a lot of time. It's a lot of sacrifice, but I've also found it to be one of the most rewarding parts of putting a book out because as we all know, you write alone in a little room and it's kind of lonely and then it's so nice to get to talk to people about and connect with people about your work. So that I think is actually much much more relevant, like building true networks in the literary community, being a good steward of your work.
Yeah.
That's much more important, I think, than having some sort of follower count on various
Totally.
social medias that keep disappearing every day anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. I like to call that being a bookish citizen
Yeah.
and learning how to
Totally.
do that. Yeah. And we don't
Absolutely.
know that, we get so hungry. And so we get really focused on our project and forget to be of service to other writers. And I
Yeah.
love the way you talked about the people on your team as your colleagues, your coworkers. We don't hear that very often. And we don't hear that mindset. And I think
Yeah.
that's so helpful. So if we could go back to the proposal for 1 minute, talk to us a little bit about that process of going from this essay that had done really well and really helped you see that there might be something in there to building a book to a degree that someone could see it and say, okay, I'm in. And then the process of you and Claudia shopping that around.
Well, I mean, this entire process was so completely expertly guided by Claudia. So I can just tell you get Claudia. That's the secret to everything. She had me really think a lot about what this book's point was, what I was trying to say.
Mm.
I did a lot of other writing. My book proposal was, I think it was about 120 pages, 100 of which was chapters. I think it was 5 chapters or 4 chapters. I can't remember exactly. And then
Wow.
one like sort of long cover letter. And the cover letter was, about
Interesting.
25 pages. And Claudia said, I was having the worst time writing this cover letter. It's so horrible to describe. I find describing your own work is so difficult, but then also
Brutal,
trying to
brutal.
describe work you haven't done yet is sort of I was getting
Mm.
really turned around and bogged down by that process. And I kept turning things into Claudia that she was like, this is bad, like we can't send this out. And I was like, I know it's really bad. And then finally she said, I don't know why this helped me so much. Like maybe it'll help other people, but it really made something click in my mind. As she said, imagine the book is already done. It's somebody else's book and you're writing a book review of it.
So
And
good.
that was good because it like gave me this sort of critical distance. And she's like, think about what a book review is. Like a book review is like summarizing what the book is, but it's also explaining its themes and like why it would be relevant for someone else to read it. And often, like, criticism can be an argument for why a reader should engage in something. And she's like, think about it like that. Think about it as somebody else's book that you love and that you're writing this critical response to about why it's essential for readers to, find the time and the money and the space and the effort to like go and there was something about creating that distance, imaginative distance, that really allowed me to just focus on what I thought the point of the work was, why I felt it was essential, why it, again, transcended the details of my own life and aimed at something universal. And then I wrote these sample chapters, none of which end up in the book. I mean, bits and pieces did, of course, and themes and certain ideas. The Lake Como chapter was part of my book proposal, but the way that it ends up in my book is very different.
Mhm.
So there's just like a lot of space to sort of say, this is what I want to do. This is where my voice is. And I'm going to have to rewrite all this anyway. So there was no pressure on it being somehow like a perfect representation of my book. There was more pressure on really making sure my voice as a writer was present in these sample chapters, but my vision for what the book was, that it was not a
Yeah.
collection of little details from my life or errant, roaming thoughts, although there's some roaming thoughts in the book,
Mhm.
but that there was a real arc that I was after, that I saw what that arc was, that I saw momentum and change, that I saw meaning changing over time, which is what
Yeah.
narrative has to be. And yeah, we put it together. And then the next step was Claudia. One of the many sort of forms of genius that she has is she has sort of like a 360 vision of what's happening in the industry at all times. She's always on top of who's just bought what, how much they paid for it, who just lost what auction, who's ready to, go big on something. And she took, her time, like really compiling this list. And we went out to a pretty select number of editors. And it was like a Thursday. And then she sent my book proposal out to this very select number of editors. And I think by Monday we had like 12 meetings. And
Yeah.
it was,
I'm not
like
surprised.
it was like 3/4 of the people that she sent it out to. And it, I would love to say like that's all on the strength of my writing, but it
Mm.
but it really isn't. And like this is an important thing I think for writers to always be aware of, is like they're very, very good books and really brilliant writers who like the timing is bad for them,
Totally.
or their
Yeah.
their work is being sent to the wrong
Yes.
person. It's like they've just bid huge on a book that's too similar to, so there's a
Yeah.
lot that actually is not about your talent or the worth of your project, but is actually about having a really, really good agent that knows how to put your work in the best position to succeed. And that's 100% what Claudia did. And I'll say this, maybe she'll get mad that I'm revealing this little secret, but my editor Lauren told me later that she had, this is just like a little glimpse into Claudia's like evil genius, but Lauren had told me later that she'd never gotten a submission from Claudia, and that there had been other books that she'd really wanted or that she had wanted to bid on, and that she had written to Claudia after and said, why didn't you send this to me? I would have bid on it. I really liked this. And apparently Claudia said, when I have the book for you, I'll let you know.
Love that.
Oh, I just got the chills. That's
So smart.
amazing.
So when
So
Lauren
smart.
got that email,
Yep.
like with my book, it's like she clicked on it immediately, she read it immediately, and she jumped on it. And, you know, again, it's like I'd love to be like, "Oh, it's all the beauty of my prose," but no, it's having a good team too. Really,
Mm,
really smart and strategic and thoughtful team that like really genuinely wants the best for your work, and that's what I've had all the way down the line.
it just sounds like you've had these like two amazing women,
Mhm.
in your corner. They're your
Yeah.
champions. Like at the end of the day, right? Like they're going to make sure that um that they're supporting you and that you're the custodian of this
Mhm.
work. But for me, it's just so heartening
Yeah,
to
me too.
hear
Me
the
too.
role that each one of them played in bringing this book to life and doing it in such a heartfelt, beautiful way.
Yeah. And
It's
so
just so
artful.
special
So artful. Yeah.
and artful. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I think I got very lucky, but there was a point when I was in my doing my MFA, or now I teach at Columbia, and so I have students who are doing their MFA and who are desperate to get started in the agency. They're or in the industry. They're wondering, will I have a book? It's very hard, but it's very important to not just like jump at the first thing that's offered, or to
Yeah.
defer your voice or your agency or what you want to an agent, which is so easy to do. It's really hard
So
to get an
easy.
agent. So, you get one and you just want to be like, okay, whatever you need, I'll do it. Like, please,
Oh my
just,
God. Yeah.
So
yeah,
true.
Yeah.
it's so true. And I
Right,
did
because you
that
feel
too.
so grateful, like, you feel so
Yeah.
lucky,
I think well, because you've said the word
Yeah.
lucky,
Lucky.
several times today. So
Mhm.
I just wanna, with respect, pull that out and say there are a lot of things that go into what we call luck. One of them is the grind that you have
Yeah.
been doing for all these years, the commitment, the talent, obviously, and the drive. I think it's really, really important that we not get caught as women, especially into like, I'm so lucky. You've positioned yourself.
Yeah, I think that's fair and I appreciate that. I mean, I think that's all true. I think another thing in this, and I'll just say this was like not immediate, very hard earned, took a
Yeah.
lot of time, and I'm continuing to learn how to do this, is to have such is to have a certain self-assurance about my own voice and about my own vision. I'm much better now than I've ever been at saying, no, I'm not going to take that change, or I don't want to do it that way, or it needs to look like this, or I don't want that cover, or and that was not where I started. And I think that it is important to figure out like how to cultivate that voice, maybe especially as women. There aren't a lot of opportunities where, at least in my experience, where there were people around me going, say no to that, or
Yeah.
wait, just wait,
Yeah.
develop that. I know you
Yeah.
want that book out now, but it's not ready. Just give it time. Develop your voice, develop your vision, like have clarity of intention. I mean, that was something I really had to learn through the grind, through getting it
Yeah.
wrong, through working with a lot of different types of editors and different formats. And I do think that that is part of like setting myself up for these types of success. Simultaneously, I've been very factually lucky. That doesn't negate that I've arrived ready for that luck. I think maybe that's
Exactly. Yeah.
that's the thing. Like
Yeah.
I've
Love
arrived
that.
ready for it. So when it
Yeah.
when it came, I knew what it was. I knew how to recognize it and how to make the most out of it. But I mean, there's so many talented, brilliant artists of all genres who just, for whatever reason, don't
Yeah.
get the kind of
Yeah.
support, or like the timing is
Yeah.
bad, or,
Yeah.
there are any number of factors that can work against one. And I do think that there is always a certain, in artistic success, it is not a meritocracy, and it is not something where it's like if you just put in the work ethic you're going to get what you want.
Totally. Yeah.
Like that's crucial, but also sometimes it's luck. And
Yeah.
that's, again, that's not to in any way diminish what I feel like I've brought to the table. It's just
Yeah.
also to recognize that there's been a little magic in these relationships as well.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I love that reframing from luck to magic. I
Mm.
think that's really that resonates for me, and I think that's helpful for people to really keep in mind. There's a lot that we can't know. There are unseeable forces.
Yeah.
We can call it luck, we can call it magic, we can call it destiny, karma, all kinds of things. We can't control it. What we can do is we can grind, we can, be as true to ourselves as artists as we possibly can. We can read a lot, which
Yeah.
writers
Yes.
often
Yeah.
forget about doing. So anyway, I appreciate what you're saying. I think really important. I want to end with the question of, you mentioned another book. So anything you could tell us about that, we'd love to know. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, I sold 2 more books actually to Lauren Ween at Simon& and Schuster, avid reader, and I'm deep into the second one, which is why I'm so like, it's so nice to just, like, talk to people that
Anytime.
understand how, yeah, the path doesn't get easier, and just because you've published one book, it sort of in some ways feels harder, but also really thrilling. And the second book is largely about the exploration of devotion and how devotion's
Mhm.
operated in my life. And it sort of looks at devotion primarily through 3 different stories. One is something that happened in my life when I was younger. The second is sort of the present of my last year. It was watching my mother take care of my stepfather who had Alzheimer's and passed away a few months ago, and seeing the kind of work and cost of that devotion. But then also largely is the story of this gigantic painting that's at the Whitney
Oh,
called The
wow.
Rose, which was a painting that this artist Jay DeFeo did. She worked on it for 8 years, like 10 to 12 hours a day, and it got bigger and bigger and bigger, and ended up ending her marriage, destroying her apartment. She lost her job, and the paint was house paint. She was not a wealthy person, and she was stealing all this house paint, got arrested at one point, and the house paint had
Wow.
lead in it, and it gave her cancer and she died. So there's also sort of this story of the burden of devotion, her devotion to her work. There's a lot
Wow.
more to her story. And, I was working on it a lot during the pandemic, especially at the end of the pandemic, and seeing the ways in which devotion took on such different weight, especially I think for mothers and for people who were really balancing more than they'd ever balanced before. And so during that time, I went, as I started working on this book, I decided I needed to do my own sort of devotion project. And I went to the Whitney and sat in front of this painting every day for a year. So there's sort of the arc of sort of testing my own capabilities for devotion. And
Wow.
that's the
Oh my
next
gosh,
book.
it sounds amazing.
So when do we
Chloe,
get to read it?
Oh gosh, I hope really soon. I had to finish it.
Wow. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh.
well, you know what I have to say? Like we've talked about luck a lot. Bethany, I feel like you and I are so lucky to have had
Yes.
Chloe. Oh my gosh, you are such a gift, and
Yeah.
your voice is
Thank
it's
you.
so important,
Yeah.
and it's so beautiful. I said to Bethany this morning, like, your writing is gorgeous. It's just it's so special. We're both really grateful to have had this conversation with you. We wish you the best of luck. We're so excited for the second book. And
Thank you.
please let our listeners know, what's the best way to stay connected with you, to follow your work. Is it on Instagram?
Oh gosh, I guess it's Instagram.
It's Instagram.
Well, yeah, Instagram, I guess. I mean, that's where I'm posting things, I guess. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Great. I love it. Thank you so much,
Amazing.
Chloe.
Thank
Thank
you
you so
so
much.
much. I
Such a
really
pleasure.
appreciate this conversation. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us on Bookbound.
If you like what you heard, please subscribe and rate and review us on your favorite podcast listening platform.
Please visit us at bookboundpodcast.com for more on us and how we work with authors.